two entities you do not want to have control of information: Silicon Valley and journalists with a bias. Because it's not just bias over political things, it's also bias over the people that have power and wealth and influence. Journalists, for whatever reason, they feel like they need to go ahead and, be arbiters of the truth, hold people accountable, even though they don't know what they're doing. See, journalists feel like they have some sanctimonious type of a code that they need to be high and mighty. I don't know, maybe it's something to do with them being from Ivy League schools or wherever they came from, that they get some kind of thing. Oh, we can win a debate. I can, put an argument out there and I'm not going to get sued or anything like that because of my journalistic shield. I rarely even have the chance I even get arrested for anything that I might say or do. But you decide to go ahead and play ball like this, and you decide to go ahead and screw with people's minds and screw with people in general, this is what you're going to get. Now, Silicon Valley Elite, in a recorded call on an invite-only app, venture capitalists started thinking about what's wrong with journalism, and they started pointing out some people that have been not doing good, from Vice.com. So, on the Clubhouse app, which is exclusively an audio social network popular with venture capitalists and celebrities, VCs, entrepreneur Balaji Srinivasan and several Andreessen Horowitz venture capitalists and TV personality Roland Martin was included in this mix. They spent at least an hour talking about how journalists have too much power to cancel people and wonder what the Titans of Silicon Valley, or the Pirates, if you remember the movie from TNT, could do about it. So, these millionaires who have been coddled by the press and lauded as innovators and disruptors fundamentally misunderstand the role of journalism the moment it turns a critical eye to their industry. Well, that might be to a point. They might feel like they always are supposed to get favorable news coverage of what they get. No, they don't have to, but there's also a thing about these VCs and these entrepreneurs being afraid of the kind of attack or blowback they might be getting, because it's not just a simple investigation and then like come back and respond to it. No, this has gotten a lot more devious and a lot more personal, and really it's just gotten a little more childish and, amateur night type of stuff. So now it suggests they're eager to find new ways to hit back at what they see as unfavorable or unfair press coverage. But there's more to this. So, Motherboard from Vice got a recording of the conversation, and they said that the topic of conversation was a writer that was named Taylor Lorenz, an internet culture reporter at the New York Times. He wrote that the app Clubhouse, quote, where VCs have gathered to mingle with one another while they are quarantined in their homes, sometimes there is a tarot card reader critiquing a member's Instagram account. Sometimes it's a dating advice show. Sometimes bored people sound out about anything that pops into their mind. What does this have to do with anything? I don't think people care about the gossip. And I don't know why some of these journalists want to do the TMZ fucking, inside edition current affair hard copy type of reporting. Tabloid. People give a shit about what these people do to make money. Do we really care about their dirty laundry, what they might be talking about? Do we care about their dating habits, or, just listening to them, just eavesdropping on them? Again, this is supposed to be like an exclusive app, and these people are finding a way to get on here and start making point. What the hell is that? Taylor Lorenz, what are you doing? All right. So the topic of conversation was on Lorenz herself. And when she left the call, she was privy to the call, and then she left, and then participants began discussing whether she's playing the woman card when speaking out about her harassment following a Twitter altercation with Srinivasan. Quote, you can't fucking hit somebody, attack them, and just say, hey, I have ovaries, and therefore you can't fight back. This is from Felicia Horowitz, a founder of the Horowitz Family Foundation, and wife of Andreessen Horowitz co-founder Ben Horowitz. So a woman saying, hey, you can't use the woman card to go ahead and say you can't, you can just attack, and then like, oh my God, my privilege, right? Or patriarchy, or whatever the bullshit is. So now, Taylor Lorenz also recently has been going after luggage startup Away, and the co-CEO Steph Corey and who has been harassed and impersonated on Twitter. So Srinivasan suggested that Lorenz, who earlier in the day had accused him on Twitter of, quote, constantly trying to destroy my career on the internet and in private, was overreacting when she perhaps was scared of him. That's why she left the conversation that night on Clubhouse. Then Srinivasan says, quote, is Taylor afraid of a brown man on the street? She shouldn't be afraid of a brown man in Clubhouse. So I literally have done nothing other than one previous tweet. So the whole, talking about tweeting as harassment, completely illegitimate, completely wrong, completely fabricated, and just false. So my point is, some tweets back and forth, and then playing, woman who cried wolf, so dish it but can't take it. That's horrible. Double standard. It's just so common here. This is bad. Then they go from a broad conversation to the state of journalism and what VCs should do to get better coverage. So now, the entire tech press, they're saying, was implicit in covering up the threat of the pandemic and claim that relying on the press is outsourcing your information supply chain to folks who are disaligned with you. So he proposed that the approaches to truth and accountability offered by GitHub, VC funding, and cryptocurrency all offer better models for journalism than the East Coast model of respect my authority, right? Nate Jones, who's a VC for Andreessen Horowitz, also said here and chimed in saying, quote, when it comes to our industry, there's really a really toxic dynamic that exists right now. Let's talk about tech. So Reacher reports about abuse in the tech industry, quote, because those stories were so popular and drove so much traffic because it's tabloid sleaze. It's like somebody sees nothing less than what the Kardashians get every day. They created a pressure on many reporters to find the next of one of those stories inside of a fast-growing tech company because those stories play very well on Twitter, especially around protecting vulnerable people. So they're the small inkling of journalists that say, well, we're going to go ahead and, take these big people down because we don't like them being better than us and bigger than us. We got a big education. My degree's from Harvard. My degree's from Columbia. And they're upset that these people are doing so well and so far above them, and they're just upset. So now you're playing with them on Twitter. It's like a playground. And you're playing at recess with them, and it's just so stupid. Anyway, why are these journalists doing this? Because in 2020, the idea that fishing for clicks to drive ad revenue is a successful or even common business model is a fallacy. Publications that rely exclusively on advertising are falling at an astonishing rate. Financially, many journalistic outlets are increasingly moving away from an ad-based revenue model driven by traffic and focusing on live events, subscriptions, and optioning their articles to movie studios and other models that rely on having a dedicated readership that trusts the publication. It still doesn't take anything away. So we're going to try to make something viral. So we can't catch them on something wrong. We're going to make them do something wrong because we're going to pump up the volume. We're going to raise up the hysteria. We're going to cause a tabloidistic thing. We're going to be out there like fucking paparazzi because that's what you're doing right now. These type of journalists like Taylor Lorenz at New York Times, you are no better than the lint off of camera from a fucking TMZ paparazzi. You are no better than them. The celebrity paparazzi is better and has much more integrity than you do, all of you journalists. That this is the kind of content you think is best? You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. So now, in this story, they mentioned that these people on this call seem to conceive of themselves as humble citizens preyed upon by corrupt elites, cravenly lusting after money and power. And that reached a bizarre apogee when Srinivasan boasted of standing up for the CEO of a scandal-plagued luggage brand, which is Away, depicting her all as but powerless because of a relatively low Twitter follower count. Conversation resented a Gamergate chat. If you don't know what that is, go look Anita Sarkeesian and I'll tell you everything. Now, the conversation, again, they said it was a Gamergate-like chat. People obsessing over minute drama, at times suggesting that Lorenz crossed the line on Twitter and must be punished. Well, we don't need cancel culture. I mean, if you want to call somebody out, they don't need to be doing that. So what you need to do is, go above. So her employer, one of the people here on this call said, should be saying, you cross the line with your editorial comments. And if I'm Srinivasan, the argument that I would make to her bosses is you should be instructing your reporters not to be making editorial judgments about someone. Stick to reporting. Yes. And it's not me for going after people that are VCs and, the wealthy, but when they're right, they're right. Now, Kiori Sicha, editor of the New York Times Styles Desk, told Motherboard in an email, Taylor, quote, is an excellent reporter doing incredibly relevant reporting for this moment. She and all reporters should be able to do their jobs without facing harassment. So they're defending the fact that this reporter, Taylor Lorenz, it's okay for her to go and pick fights on Twitter and try to create a story and become the story instead of reporting the story. Okay, that's real keen. I love that. Then there was more in the call where there's a lot more. Okay, back to Corey. We're talking about this co-CEO of Away, said that she was exposed in an expose on The Verge last year, publishing a series of Instagram story posts in which she suggested she was unfairly targeted by The Verge, in part because she's a woman. So again, we're just taking Instagram stories from somebody that worked for Away that is talking bad about their boss, a former employee, nevertheless. So it doesn't look like we're getting anything where they're actually interviewing the ex-employee. They're taking Instagram posts. How stupid is that? And then Corey comes back and says, the incentive isn't to report what's happening. She's absolutely right. It's the right things that will be shared by people on social media. And several of these digital-only outlets have nearly non-existent editorial standards, especially the clickbaity ones. You know who they are. She's telling truth. Side note, I could write a whole separate essay about how defamation lawsuits should be easier to pursue now that the misrepresentation is the business model of some of these outlets. And that's the point. When these companies are able to just go ahead and go on personal attacks, because it's emotionally personal, they're emotionally invested, these journalists, in doing that. What good is that? Listen, you want to call them out and catch them on something, corruption, insider trading, fraud, RICO statutes, whatever the fuck, okay? Fine. That's what you do to get them down. You go investigate them. You don't play this bullshit political thing right here, playing with privilege, playing with diversity, equality, inclusion, and all this bullshit, and playing with social media, playing this virtual playground. It's so stupid. And then what happens is there's an attack on Corey, this Away co-CEO. The Instagram comments were a supposed critique of the journalism industry, and then a number of journalists commented on them, including Lorenz, tweeting Steph Corey, the disgraced former CEO of Awake Luggage Company, is ranting on IG stories about the media. Her posts are incoherent, and it's disappointing to see a woman who ran a luggage brand perpetuate falsehoods like this about an industry she has zero understanding of. No, she has absolute understanding of it. You don't like being called to the floor, Taylor, okay? You didn't like it, and you decided to get other people to go ahead and pile on because you didn't like it, because it pissed you off. Now, that's just a woman acting on emotion. That's an emotional trigger. What the hell is that going to do? Again, you're just pissed off because your feelings got hurt. Wah! Tough deal. If you can't cut your beat, then get out of it. And for the New York Times editorial board, for that particular styles editor to tolerate this, well, obviously it's just tolerated because that's what the New York Times does. They do some good reporting, but when this kind of bullshit's allowed, this just tarnishes the reputation of the great old lady, right? So Lorenz's tweet was immediately tweeted about by then VCs, then they started coming back at her. Srinivasan made a 7-tweet thread suggesting Lorenz and journalists like her are sociopaths. She's not wrong. Not all of them, but there's many. Then there's a parody account for Taylor Lorenz that started retweeting Srinivasan and other tech investors and executives critical of her work. The account's bio links to a website, also self-described as a parody, dedicated to harassing Lorenz. Well, you can't blame this on these VC people just because somebody wants to go after Taylor Lorenz. Listen, she put it on herself. She's the one that picked the fight. And then she picks the fight, and then she says, no, I'm a woman. You can't punch me. You can't punch at me. So a woman can't fight with a woman? And then you're going after a guy who's Indian, who's brown. Oh, so, diversity, equality, inclusion. When they're picking at each other. Such bullshit. And honestly, for the VC types, this Clubhouse call to start, playing to the ground like them, they didn't take the high road either. They didn't. But they know it's that nobody's playing fair here. The journalists are not playing fair. That's a major problem. So I'm sorry, the people with wealth and power, they actually got it right on this one.